About a mile away lay the castle of Corax, the drow tyrant of Teokaria. Within the castle dungeons, a banging noise could be heard from the dungeon cells. "Hey, cut that racket out down there! You'll never break through your cell door!" Alexa sat with her head in her hands, her shoulder bruised black from being slammed against the door. She looked around the room again. "This is insane. I have to get out before I lose my mind." She got up and studied the back wall. It was, likely as not, several feet thick, but she had loosened one of the stones. If her calculations were correct, she could make it out that night. She placed her hands on the rock slab and pulled. A small grinding noise told her she was doing well. She wiggled the stone from side to side until it came out. The stone above it shuddered and gave way, causing a chain reaction as the whole back wall collapsed. She covered her head and charged into the avalanche. The guards leaped down the stairs and poked their heads around. Alexa had been completely covered by the rocks. The guards stepped in slowly and began moving the rocks aside. A fighter since birth, Alexa braced herself for combat, the thrill of battle rushing through her veins as the stones over her head began moving. The nearest drow was caught completely by surprise. A stone flew at him, planting its sharp side into his skull. Alexa burst out and socked an orc that came at her with surprising force. The guard fell senseless, and she dashed out with one remaining guard hot on her heels. She turned around and hurled a flat slab of rock she had taken with her. The final guard ducked, but found himself with a broken nose as Alexa hopped on his head. She lifted the drow guard over her shoulder and dropped him in her cell with the others. She relieved one of his keys and picked up a spear one that had dropped. As she ran, she slowed down and kept as quiet as possible. This wouldn't help her much, as drow had a special ability to sense the presence of other beings, while Garek's tall, muscular, yet fat creatures with long snouts relied on the smell. Alexa, however, had excellent hearing, which she put to use. A clattering stone ahead of her put her on guard. As the noisemaker came close, its constant grunting informed Alexa that it was Garek. Closing her eyes, she tightened her focus entirely on her hearing. A slight waver in the Garek's breathing signified Alexa had been noticed. She heard the Garex pick up its war axe and struck with all the speed she could muster. The Garex didn't expect the elf to have noticed it and was caught off guard. By the time it realized it was in pain, it was on the floor with a severe heartburn. She lifted the Garek onto her back and dropped it in a small side passage and continued on her way. Alexa took off her boots for stealth and headed off towards what she guessed was the weapons store. Turning a corner, she found herself inside the armory. A torch burned on the wall, illuminating the room and casting gold reflections on the walls from the various weapons sitting in the room. Grinning, she attempted to wield a mace made for Garek hands. She swung it, and although she managed to use it rather well, she decided it was too impractical. Casting a glance over the room, she selected a gem-studded sword from a suit of drow armor. She considered fitting the armor onto herself, but the drows strictly believed that women and girls were completely unable to fight, so she found none according to her size. She finished by grabbing a stout rope. As quiet as a shadow, she stole through the passageways until she nearly collided with a pair of Gareks that were passing by. Fortunately, they didn't see her, and she noticed that their noses were drooling, which meant their nasal passages had sprung a leak. She flattened herself against a wall, and they walked right by. Ducking through passageways, she slew every opponent that showed any signs of having spotted her and hid their bodies. She came to a flight of stairs that she knew led to the top of the wall, and was faced with a very surprised drow. Unsure of what to do, his hand went to his sword, but he was dead before he could pull it out. The drow fell limp over Alexa, and she relieved it of its sword. She hoisted him onto her shoulders with ease, and began to look for a place to hide the body, when another appeared. His chest was pierced before he knew what was happening. Alexa slung the drow over her other shoulder and continued to search. She found a suitable spot and stuffed the drow into it. She chuckled to herself. Carrying two drow taller than me with ease, I surprise myself sometimes. She slipped silently onto the wall top and slipped through the shadows. There were only 3 drow on this wall section, and she wasted no time in killing the first. She tossed its body over the wall and set to work securing the rope around the statue. "Hey, you're that prisoner!" Alexa whirled around and threw a rock at full force at the drow. The force of the blow knocked it unconscious, and it crumpled to the ground. She slid her arms under the drow's unconscious forms and dropped it onto the ground far below. Smiling spitefully, she returned to her work on the rope. Once done, she began the long climb down. Overhead, she began to hear noises of Korex's minions. Glancing up, she realized they had spotted her and slid down the wall as quickly as she could. As she reached the ground, a small group of drow ran to the edge of the wall and charged at her. "The prisoner is escaping!" She gritted her teeth. "Can I take all of them on?" She crouched by the broken form of the drow she had thrown over the wall. "I might as well bluff it." The drow stopped short of her. The one in the lead held out his hands. We have orders to take you alive, prisoner Alexa. Come quietly and we won't hurt you. She grinned at him. You won't stop me. The drow smiled confidently. You're just a girl. What could you do to us? Alexa laughed loudly. A mere girl, huh? Could a mere girl do this? She grabbed the dead drow and, straining her muscles, lifted him over her head. She spat at him. Not so confident now, are you? The drow gritted his teeth. Strength is not all that matters in battle. You're outnumbered. Alexa cursed and dropped the drow. She drew her sword. Come at me! 3 drow attacked, with the leader protesting. Wait, we need her alive! Alexa ducked under their attacks and slashed the 3 of them. Still hoping to intimidate the others, she slung the drow over her shoulders and stood up. How about now? Ready to give up? The remaining drow backed down, but their leader didn't. He raised his weapon. Ah, you'll live without your troublesome legs. A little torch came on in Alexa's head. Legs? She stood up straight and lifted the edge of her ragged skirt. You wouldn't want to lop off these little things, would you? Her plan worked. The drow relaxed for a moment, and she took advantage of it and stabbed him. Gorex! Attack! He coughed. Alexa threw the drow at the oncoming Gorex and dashed into the forest, grunting as branches whipped against her face, arms, and legs. As the Gorex gained ground, she turned around. You leave me no choice but to fight you, huh? The sound of fighting and Gorek hooves stamping drew Derezeth to his feet. He turned around and rushed down the stone. As he reached the bottom, the sounds died away. He scanned the forest, but no movement caught his eye, and he couldn't smell anything. He stepped off the rock, and the sound resumed. About a score of Goreks were headed his way. As he listened more intently, he realized that their numbers were diminishing. Now there were only 15, maybe 10. Something pretty powerful was fighting back. Derezeth drew his axe and dashed in the direction of the noises. He began hearing noises clearly, and he picked up his pace. He slowed down as movement became clearer to his eyes, then stepped on into the battlefield and found it empty. As he was about to turn around, a grunt drew his attention. In a shadowy area, the remaining Goreks were watching him. He smiled and dashed at them. They brandished their axes and charged. He ducked a blade and brought his axe up through the nearest Gorek's jaw. He weaved through the next 2, then slashed the one to his left, punching the other one soundly in the soft spot under its mouth, taking care not to hit the spikes protruding from its jawbones. He vaulted into the air and brought his axe down between the Gorek's huge ears. The last brave Gorek slashed at Derezeth, who parried and planted the axe into its snout. The rest cowered from him, but when he advanced toward the prisoner, they raised their weapons. He ran to the left, then dashed in front of them, slashing their bulging bellies. The Goreks fell face first into the ground, dead. Derezeth cut Alex's bonds. Looked like you got yourself into a tight spot. Since those pig-headed minions of Corex's are after you, I suppose you're against him. Alexa didn't answer. Derezeth stepped back. What, no thank you? I didn't need any help. I was doing just fine. Sure. Tied up, gagged, surrounded by Gorex. Okay, I get it. Since you relieved me of my captors, I'll say thank you once, but don't expect it out of me again. As Alexa said this, she turned and looked Derezeth in the eyes. He tried to hide his smile, but failed to do so. Her eyes were green, as were most forest elves' eyes. Her hair was very long, hanging below her waist, and was either black, dark brown, or some other dark color. Her nose was just the perfect size for her face. Not too big, not too small. Just right. No matter how hard Derezeth looked, he couldn't find any blemishes or freckles, except for the numerous scars that suggested she hadn't had a good day in a long time. Her body was slim, but not skinny, and not chubby or fat either. He figured that she was either on a diet or worked hard, and judging by the huge muscles on her arms, the second was more likely. You're pretty stuffy. Your looks belie your nature, he commented, grinning. Alexa blushed, but didn't answer. I suggest since you are pursued by Korax, you stay at Aparia village. Alexa turned around. The resisting village? Yep, we're planning an attack, but we lack sufficient forces. My father is the leader. By the way, my name's Derezeth. I'm Alexa. Derezeth led her to Aparia, and they entered the town. Mira lit her lamp again and greeted Derezeth. You're back! You took a while. Ah! There's someone behind you! Derezeth pulled Alexa into the light. She's Alexa. I helped her escape a squad of Gorex. She's been a captive of Corex's for several years. She's kinda mean, but not bad. Mira examined Alexa. Nice to meet you. Alexa just shrugged. Derezeth shrugged too. She's not too good around people. Mira laughed softly. I'll be nice to you, and I hope you make lots of friends here. Derezeth proceeded to lead her up a ladder to his house. We should tell my dad you're here. Derezeth led the way into his father Drosias' office. At the far end of the room, a tall, white-haired elf stood at the window. He turned around and spoke to his son, for he was Drosias. Derezeth, what is it? His eyebrows were thin and white, and his chin had a small beard, white as his hair. His nose was somewhat long, but not like an old wizard or dwarf's nose. His features were perfect, and he looked young despite being over 40. I brought a guest. I thought I would let you know. Drosias' eyes lit up. Who is it? Drazeth beckoned Alexa to come in. When he saw her, Drosias smiled, his hard features softening. Welcome, my dear. I hope Drazeth received you well. You are welcome to stay as long as you like, despite the rough time we are going through. Alexa bowed, and she and Drazeth took their leave. Once out of his father's house, Drazeth turned to Alexa. You should go to Tirhaka's house. She has an extra bed there. You'll find it quite comfortable. It's the house next door on the right. Drazeth went to bed instantly and fell asleep within an hour, which was unusually quick for him. Alexa, however, was feeling extremely nervous. This was the first time she had seen anyone that wasn't a drow, orc, or garek. She climbed up the ladder slowly, trembling with anxiety. She hadn't felt like this around Drazeth, probably because he had saved her, a fact she didn't want to admit. She arrived at the door and knocked lightly on it. Within a few seconds, the door was opened by a short and stout elf woman. Alexa didn't know how to start. Are you Tirhaka? The lady nodded. I am. She looked Alexa in the eyes, squinting to see in the darkness. My, what tattered clothes! You're a mess, and you're covered in blood. What happened to you? Alexa hesitated, and then began to explain. I've been a prisoner of Corex's for several years. I managed to escape just tonight, and Drazeth helped me out. He suggested I come to you for a bed. Tirhaka smiled. Well, if you don't have a place to stay, I always have room for one more. Come on in, and let's get you some food. You look starved. Alexa was given a mug of red juice and a slab of bread, which she tore into rapidly. Slow down, or you won't have time to enjoy it, Tirhaka advised. Alexa stopped long enough to say, we're hungry, and then continued. She was given another loaf, and she finished that as well. When she was done, Tirhaka took a look at his clothes. This won't do. You must not have washed these in years. She left the house and climbed down the ladder. You wait here. Try not to touch too much. She returned with a few jars of water, which she poured into a large tub. She then began to light a fire. You might want to wash up. I'll get a nightgown for you, if I have one your right size. Reluctantly, Alexa undressed. Tirhaka returned with a gown and noted Alexa's physique. You don't look as starved as most prisoners would. In fact, you look almost normal, and yet your arms are so muscular. My, even Drazeth's biceps aren't that big. You must have really worked out in that dungeon. Alexa slid into the tub, flexing one arm. I had a lot of free time, so I started to work on enhancing my physical strength for the day when I can crush Corex. Tirhaka gasped. A young girl like you shouldn't have such thoughts. She sat down next to the tub. You're well shaped too. You must be a magnet to men with breasts like those. Alexa went bright red from her ears to her neck. Well, I haven't met many decent men. Tirhaka nodded. That's a shame. Drazeth's as decent as they come, though. It's a pity for you that he's already in love with Miera. Alexa raised her eyebrows. He is? Tirhaka nodded silently. Alexa finished washing up and changed into the nightgown. Tirhaka showed her her bed, and she lay down and went to sleep almost instantly. Well, that's chapter 1 in the prologue. So, well, just tell me what you think in a comment or something, and and if you think I should make a new account for this, then go ahead and let me know. Yeah, so, okay, bye.